close. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time. But you are also an outspoken critic of politics, as far as I can see, especially on social media. Like you put out your opinions, which is what scientists should do. But in a world increasingly polarized by like different beliefs and ideologies, how do you navigate communicating science as a universal truth? Maybe, like, what do you think about us having flat earthers in like 21st century? How do you put these two things together? How do you navigate that?
It's a very good question, because I think about this a lot, because it's so easy to just laugh, isn't it? Especially with flat Earth.
It is, yeah.
And I do,
Yeah.
occasionally joke about them. In the show, I have a joke about flat Earth.
Mhm.
But ultimately, I've come to think that what we should all be doing is we have to try and unify. We have to understand that there are people with different views and different opinions and different perspectives. And of course, that's what makes our civilization so rich. And so I've kind of changed my mind. I've realized I was influenced by Oppenheimer, actually, that he gave the BBC Wreath Lectures. So the BBC had these things called the Wreath Lectures, and lots of very wonderful people have done them. Stephen Hawking did them relatively recently, but Oppenheimer did them in '53. And it was very shortly after the Manhattan Project, and very shortly after he clearly felt responsible in part for what happened to Japan, with the bombs falling on Japan. And then so he'd thought about how we can avoid doing that again. Because, of course, we haven't avoided it necessarily. We could destroy ourselves. We could do it now. We could do it tomorrow. Still there, the threat. And so he said that he had this wonderful analogy of an electron. And at the time, quantum mechanics was quite new, right? So people were thinking about this electron. Is it a point-like thing, like a little particle? Is it a wavy thing that fills the space that it's in? What is it? And the answer is, of course, it can behave in both those ways. You need at least both those pictures to understand the thing. And more as well. So it's neither one of them's right or wrong. It's a complicated thing. Both of them are valuable. And then he said, so it is with human societies and politics, right? So there are people you might call on the right of politics or the left of politics. Other people might be devoutly religious, or they might not be religious, and so on. There's all these different ways of looking at the world, and they're all valuable. It turns out it's like an electron. It's like you can't get a complete picture of a civilization, of a society, without understanding that there are these different ways of thinking. There's the idea in politics about the needs of the individual. You might say, well, I don't want to pay too much tax. I want to work hard and I want as much money as I can. Or you might say, well, there's a society and that needs me to pay my taxes, and there's a social structure. And the same with belief. What's our response to this great mystery of existence? Some people might say, well, it's just physics. We just do that, and and some people might say, no, there's a spiritual dimension, and I feel that there's more to it. All these things are necessary. They're not to be. It's not a compromise to say that I understand all these positions are necessary. It would be like saying it's a compromise to say that, well, the electron, it's not really wavy and it's not really a point. That's not a compromise. Yeah.
You have to.
It's a different picture. And so I've sort of stopped, in many ways, trying to. I don't know. I've tried to be more conciliatory. I've realised that for me, the world is divided into people of goodwill and people not of goodwill. That's what I think now. So but I think that. So I think.
I think the more you deal with people, the more that outcome becomes more clear to people. It all comes down to intent and goodwill after a point, because you have seen enough people, you have seen enough opinions, and after that, you are accustomed to all of those. Now, the only big separator is basically goodwill and intent, really. So I feel that if I'm being honest. But in the
I just want to say, Feynman wrote a very similar essay at the same time called "The Value of Science," and he said that the thing you learn from science is this: that the understanding that you don't know everything, that's very deep and important. It's the foundation of research. You wouldn't do research if you think you know everything. But you have to bring that into your life, and it's quite difficult to do, because you might believe something. I don't think Brexit was a good idea, for example, right?
I know. Yeah.
I spent a lot of time sort of saying, I think this is a bad idea. But then recently I thought, well, what's the point of that? What's the point of criticizing something that's happened? And a load of people who, in good faith, voted for it, thought it was a good thing to do. So I'm kind of not mellowing, but understanding what Feynman meant. What he really meant it. When he said, "Don't think you know the answer," that is the key. Don't be so sure of your own position. It's very hard.
Yeah,
but it
is very hard. You are the easiest person you can trick yourself. You can trick yourself. So I mean, that is very, and I think that's also one of the separation between those groups you mentioned too. Scientists keep saying doubting yourself, but when one side keeps saying we know everything how it happened, this is how it happened. So I think that causes some friction too. But I'm seeing some mellowing in the other side too, being more open to science, more open to questioning. So it is slowly coming together. And at this point, I want to actually ask you, someone as knowing, what science brings us, what it teaches us, and the vastness of the universe. How do you find like personal meaning and purpose? Because you mentioned your show has some philosophy to it too. And how do we position ourselves? So what advice would you give to others searching for the same, like this meaning and purpose in the context of such an immense, mind-bogglingly big cosmos? Like, where do we belong? What did you come to find so far?
Well, I think that if you reflect on what you are, so each of us, what are we? We're the most remarkable structures in the universe, undoubtedly. So it's not black holes or galaxies or planets or stars that are the most incredible things. It is us, because we can think. I can't believe. I think it was Sagan who first said it. That he said a physicist is a hydrogen atom's way of understanding hydrogen atoms, which is it's an astonishing thing. And so I think that somewhere in there, in that the probable rarity of structures like us is the answer to that question. If you reflect on it for a moment, if you think, what are the chances of a load of atoms, the hydrogen from the Big Bang or just after, and the carbon and everything from made of stars, all comes together in a dust cloud, and suddenly you're sat there thinking about things. If you think about that for a few seconds, I think at least a smile appears on your face.
It is pretty immense.
So
it's an